Hi guys, I'm Adam Wilborn from WhatCulture. He's Adam Nicholas from WhatCulture. Backlash 2020 has just finished and we are here to tell you what went down. And Adam Nicholas, we should probably start with the headline story. Did we get the greatest wrestling match ever at Backlash?
We didn't get the greatest wrestling match ever, but we did get a pretty good match. I have to be honest. I know a lot of people are going to have their opinions on this one. Again, another slightly longer match that perhaps a lot of people were expecting, but I would say there was plenty in this to enjoy, I think is a fair assessment, and both guys poured pretty much everything I expected they could into this match. And while it may not have been the greatest wrestling match ever, it was a long shot away from being the worst wrestling match ever.
Yeah, I think there's an argument to be made that match actually saved this show because...
Quite possibly.
Oh, I was on the edge when we headed into that match. And I can understand that there are aspects of the match that people will have protestations about, but overall, yeah, really enjoyed it. But we'll get into it in due course. Let's start at the beginning of the night. Of course, we had the United States Championship match between Apollo Crews and Andrade. Kicked off the show, stuck on the kickoff show due to that Raw Tag Team Championship match we were going to get later on. Yes, we'll get to that. But in the end, the United States Championship match saw Kevin Owens come out resplendent in a tie and a T-shirt on commentary. He got involved. He hit a stunner on Angel Garza, who'd been sort of not necessarily running interference, but certainly distracting the referee when Apollo seemed to have the match won. So Owens hits a stunner on Angel Garza, which allows Apollo Crews to hit the spinning powerbomb on Andrade to get the 1-2-3 and retain his United States Championship. A little bit of an issue with the pin, which was kind of a sign of things to come and probably what we've grown to expect with our live streams, Nicholas. But anyway, what did you think of this opening match of the night?
Well, this was a tough one for me because if I'm being completely transparent with everybody at home, I was having to try and solve a bunch of technical difficulties we were having on the live stream. Shock horror. Me and Adam Wilborn having trouble on a live stream. Who would have thought it? But from what we did catch, it felt like it was starting and then it was finished. It felt very quick. Not like, obviously it wasn't that quick, but to me, that's how it felt. I know obviously Kevin Owens was there to add an extra layer to it on commentary. We didn't get to hear that so much because we couldn't listen to it at the time. I'm sure he was wonderful on commentary. I have no doubt there. But ultimately, I guess we were hoping maybe they might have been given a chance to have a real match of the night contender, and it doesn't really seem like they might have gotten the chance to do that, really.
No, I think it's very much the case now that the championship of the standard of the United States Championship, or the esteem it's held in right now, when it's shoved onto the kickoff show, especially after the Intercontinental Championship match we saw on Friday. It kind of gives you an example of what it's going to be. It's going to be a sort of match you'd probably get on Monday Night Raw. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw that, tomorrow night on Raw. Yeah, basically done exactly the same. But it was fine. We'll move on next to the first match on the main card. We started with the Women's Tag Team Championship match. Of course, Bayley and Sasha Banks defending against Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross and the Iconics, Billy Bloody Kay, Peyton Bloody Royce. And the big takeaway here, aside from the fact that Bayley and Sasha are still tag team champions.
There it
is, more importantly than that, the Iconics didn't get pinned. So they deserve another title shot. One more match, Adam Nicholas.
I mean, who's going to be able to stop you? This man has got a complete wind spell behind him. There's nobody can stop Adam Wilborn from getting what he wants. But you are right. In the past, we would have seen the Iconics probably would have taken the pin in this match. That's definitely something that would have happened. They didn't. Nikki Cross and Alexa Bliss were the ones who ended up losing the match. As you put it, they didn't win, but they didn't lose, which is about 50% true. But hey, listen, at the end of the day, they did get a chance to put on a decent match. We got 6 women who actually genuinely decent enough chemistry. We always get a chance to see the teams perform. Sasha and Bayley, though, for me, it was the right choice. They are... The package you've got with those two at the minute is just too good. Like, the story's there. They finally started putting that into motion. The gears are all there. Stick with it for me. And because we do get, of course, the fact that they will be staying together means they're going to get the tag match in NXT between those two and Tegan Nox and Shotzi Blackheart. And that whether you wanted the Iconics to win or not is a good reason to keep those two together and good reason to keep the belts on them.
Yeah, exactly. I'm holding off. I'm hoping that my Iconics tag title win has just been put on the back burner because you've got another pay-per-view between now and SummerSlam where I would assume you're going to have that amazing championship match between Bayley and Sasha Banks, the only tag team in this match to do separate entrances, and they're the bloody champions. There was a bit with Bayley putting on, I can't remember which title it was, basically just shoving the other title in Sasha's hands to be like, hold this for a second, I'll just sort myself out here. She even did a separate interview as Sasha made her entrance. As you say, this story that they're weaving with them is spectacular, and I was disappointed, obviously, that my girls didn't win, but I was still absolutely fine with Bayley and Sasha retaining those championships. And this story continuing, we followed that up with the match all about piss, Jeff Hardy versus Sheamus. And I think a lot of people went into this assuming, with the sort of redemption arc that they'd been painting on Friday Night SmackDown, that Jeff Hardy was going to emerge victorious. I was one of those people, and I'm man enough to admit that when I'm slightly incorrect. What did you think of Sheamus victorious here after hitting well, I did enjoy the fact that he hit a bro kick, obviously, in the ring for the 1-2-3 to win the match. But prior to that, he also hit a bro kick, akin to like when they had that 3-person tag match and someone just lobbed a ladder at someone.
Yes.
Jeff Hardy was trying all of his fancy running along the barricade nonsense and ran straight into the soul of Sheamus's boot, basically.
He met his soulmate, didn't he? And it wasn't the one he was going to marry. It was the one that was going to go in his face. Listen, I'd like to just rewind this track back if that sounded fast, because if we go back to the podcast that we all talked on, WrestleCulture previewed Backlash, and I was laughed out of the room by Wilborn and Mr. Cleary, who both said it's going to be Jeff Hardy because of the redemption arc. But ultimately, I feel like there's a performer in Sheamus. I do, and I feel like there's still stuff we can achieve. Both guys, to be fair, but I just think if you're WWE, you're looking at Jeff and you're thinking, and it's a toss-up, isn't it? Because Jeff has his own personal demons he's dealing with on a regular basis. Sheamus, on the other hand, injuries as well. And there's no guarantee that it could be one more thing happens to him and then that's him done. So who do you put the stock into? That's quite a difficult decision. But it seems for now, Sheamus is the bet. And, this isn't necessarily the end of a push for Jeff Hardy at all. It looks good for Sheamus being the heel to go over the top of Jeff. And in such a, it was a nasty fashion, wasn't it? He managed to kick out of a twist of fate and a swanton bomb, and then hit him with that double bro kick combo, one outside the ring, one inside. And it seems the stock of the Celtic Warrior, Mr. Wilborn, your older brother, is heading places.
Yeah, he's got his foot onto the ropes, as you mentioned, after Jeff had hit the twist of fate and the swanton bomb, and then hit him with 2 bro kicks for the 1-2-3. I think I can see both men in World Championship matches before this year is out, but the anticipation, as soon as it happened, as soon as I realised that you were right, as you said, and that Sheamus was getting the victory here, I suddenly thought, Jesus, Sheamus Braun Strowman in some sort of Extreme Rules match is mouth-watering. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We've got the Universal Championship match to come. Did Miz and Martin? No, of course they didn't win. But anyway, before we get to that, did this match piss me off? Asuka versus Nia Jax for the Raw Women's Championship. And the match was fine. First sort of 8 or so minutes was absolutely fine. It was a bit... I think I just feel more tense at the moment whenever you see Nia Jax in a match, especially with someone like Asuka. But it was trundling along perfectly. You were getting little hope spots for Asuka, and then Nia Jax being, Nia Jax. And then they go for some sort of armbar thing on the over the ropes, sort of with Asuka draped over the ropes. That sort of eventually ends up with Nia sort of spilling with her to the outside. They're brawling. Nia's smashing Asuka into the barricade very safely, I hasten to add. And then all of a sudden, Asuka hits a kick on Nia Jax's head, and we hear the bell ring, and suddenly realise they've gone for a double count out, haven't they? And Asuka not only never won this championship, but as far as I can remember, hasn't even defended it yet.
Yeah, this was not a good move, I don't think. I think that was genuine concern on my end. I was thinking that WWE, because of the stock that they hold in Nia Jax, and they do, you best believe they do, we're going to have our win this, maybe. We were concerned that was a genuine possibility. Instead, what we've had is they've had a lose, technically, but they both got counted out. So they've tried to protect her, and what they've actually done is damage Asuka once again. Nobody comes out better from this, neither of them for me, in a match that could have really done with a definitive winner. And you're right, even Nia Jax's, we're all always a bit tense when she's wrestling, but that wasn't a huge deal of chemistry here because there's a lot of clunky stuff happening in the ring, and I think it's probably a bit of trepidation on everybody's part because they're not sure about committing and ending up with a huge gash in the head, to be honest.
Yeah, it's getting to the point now you can argue where I was saying that you're worried that it's going to go the opposite way, that Nia's going to be hesitant to hit stuff. There was a moment where I think Asuka went for some sort of pinfall, and they did the classic spot where the bigger opponent, let's say, looks down, realises they're not going to get rolled up, and goes to sit on them, and it just seems to take an age. But regardless, that wasn't the issue here. The issue was the fact they went for a double count out. Just so frustrating, and the annoyance kind of kept coming for me. I realised that it kind of made sense, but we had the 2-on-1 handicap match for the Universal Championship. One of the highlights of the night for me, and that was, by the way, the music video that John Morrison and The Miz shot, and we've already seen a little bit of it already. We saw some of it on the kickoff show as well, and they just, I suppose, to kill a bit of time, came out and just showed it again before the Strowman Express came trundling through. And it was a classic story of, despite the fact that these are two former tag team champions, two scared little bastards trying to get the win over the giant monster. And they appeared, Adam Nicholas, to be about to win. And then the wheels fell off.
The wheels did fall off. And I tell you what, the kind of work their way up to it well, and we would have normally seen the two guys against Braun just get completely destroyed. But they got the numbers game right, I think, those two. And I guess you can expect that. Miz is good at what he does. He knows exactly how to do it. And John Morrison's good as well. But together they work well as this sort of, we had the numbers, we're going to outsmart them, we're going to outplay them. But actually, you got to the point where literally they did this great double team, where the Miz did the skull crushing finale. Morrison did a double stomp on the back of Braun at the same time. Morrison was the legal man. And Morrison went for the cover and was undoubtedly going to get the 3. And then The Miz decided to pull him off. And I don't mean that in the rude way, I mean that in the way that he dragged him off the pin count, pinfall, and we didn't get a winner. And from there, we realised Braun was going to get up and go full Braun, full hands, and smash some boys, and that's exactly what he did.
I get it. Look, if you want to defend this, it does make sense. Like, The Miz wants to be Universal Champion. Why would he just let John Morrison be Universal Champion? And they made it explicit, I think, on the kickoff show and also throughout the pay-per-view, that it wasn't going to be co-Universal Champions, even though that's all they've been talking about for the last few weeks. It was going to be whoever gets the pinfall becomes champion. But I mean, if you're Miz, why wouldn't you just let your mate win it and then say, we'll settle it between the two of us?
Yeah.
Bollocks. This really pissed me off. And then, of course, Braun Strowman running power slam. But hopefully, let's just move past this. Let's have Sheamus, Extreme Rules with all the gizmos, and hopefully we can turn things around. And then we got a really great match, again spoiled by the finish. Drew McIntyre, Bobby Lashley for the WWE Championship. They've been sowing the seeds of this Lana MVP stuff for weeks now. A great match. It didn't, before it even started, Bobby Lashley locked in the full Nelson for about a minute on Drew McIntyre. Eventually, Drew fought back to his feet, insisted he was fine to have a match. The bell rang. Bobby Lashley was going after him, and this was just two big hunks of meat smashing against each other, Adam Nicholas.
It was, but in a good way, though. Like, we were watching it, and it just reached a point where it was undeniable that we were watching a good match. These two were getting the best out of each other. Lashley just looked great. And I tell you what, man, I keep saying it, and I'm going to keep banging the drum. Them tights, man, they have changed everything. But not just that, Drew knew how to get the best out of him too. Unlocked the fact that he knew that we were all going to be slightly concerned because of that pre-match beatdown that he got. So he was obviously not 100%, which was the story they were telling. But Lashley just looked sharp, which is very rare. I'm not usually a huge Lashley fan for his matches, but genuinely he looked sharp. The chemistry was good between the two. They complemented each other well. And the problem was, though, the match was timed pace-wise perfectly. It was building and building and building. We'd hit a point where it was really, really good. And then what happened?
Well, yeah, I mean, there was a spot where, this isn't the bit we're moaning about, Drew McIntyre looked like he was going to try and hit a tombstone at one point, which had us all popping off, and there was bits where spears were reversed into Kimuras. It was really good stuff, really good working together.
And just to say as well, by the way, not that I'm suggesting that Drew McIntyre watches our content or anything, but we definitely did a video about 10 finishers that new superstars should adopt. And number one on that list was Drew McIntyre with the Tombstone Pile Driver. That's all I'm saying.
Just putting it out there. But yes, as Bobby Lashley was kind of gaining the upper hand, out comes Lana. I mean, I don't know what the strategy was here. She walks out. MVP's like, "What are you doing here?" Bobby Lashley's like, "What are you doing here?" And Lana storms up onto the ring apron, distracts her husband in the middle of a World Championship match, the first World Championship match he's had in, 13 years? They do the old bit where almost Bobby Lashley gets bumped into Lana and almost knocks her off the apron, but thankfully stops himself, turns around, Glasgow kiss, Lana gets knocked into MVP, and then Bobby Lashley turns around, Claymore, 1, 2, 3. Congratulations, Drew McIntyre, the right person won and still WWE champion, but it just took the air out of the room, didn't it?
It did, and it was, just to put the exclamation point on it all, is that they were so focused on what was going on with Lana that we actually missed the Claymore kit. The cameraman actually missed the Claymore kit. We just saw the end of it, which was probably about as much as you need to write about this. Shall we move on?
Yeah, what happened next? I don't know.
Yep, that's a good...
Basically, we were told, we did literally do a news story about an hour before the pay-per-view that WWE had announced just this afternoon they announced, do you know what? All the stuff we've been doing on Raw with the Street Profits and the Viking Raiders, they're actually going to have a match for the Raw Tag Team Championships. And that match never happened. It just started with them brawling inexplicably out in the car park, and then they got thrown onto Braun Strowman's car. His insurance premiums must be through the bloody roof, by the way. Mm-hmm. And so then they're sort of brawling, and they grab, obviously, all the implements that we've seen. So the Viking Raiders had shields and axes and a bowling ball, and the Street Profits had golf clubs. And then they said, you know what? Let's put these weapons down. What did the Five Fingers say to the face? Bang, they start brawling again. Someone got put through a window. There was a bit where, Ivar was daydreaming about turkey legs. And this was, I mean, I don't want to hog this whole thing, so I'm going to pass it over to you here, but we were just, seeing them do cinematic stuff. But this was just, it was so out of the blue. It was so random. And we were going, is there going to be a match here? They continue brawling. And then ninjas.
I can't believe that's the end of this. Like, that's where this leads to. And for anyone at home who thinks we've just lost our minds, I assure you, well, actually, you might have done, but I assure you we haven't. Akira Tozawa turns up dressed as a ninja.
On a motorbike.
Like a bunch of Yakuza ninjas, which, by the way, pretty cool. And if Akira Tozawa is going to start a new gimmick where he's got a gang of ninjas at his disposal, I'm all in, right? But this was just like, what is going on here? And then they decided that they were better together, Adam Wilborn. 2-cup analogy once again. Viking Raiders, Street Profits. The Viking Profits, who came together to fight the motorbike ninjas. What a story that is. And then they beat them all, apart from one of the very last ones, the final boss ninja, who turned up, a very tall 7-foot man in a ninja suit that made Akira Tozawa look tiny, and they just ran away because despite the fact that Ivar had summoned the power of turkey legs to use psychic powers to pull one into his hand, who wrote this? It was a 10-year-old, and someone just put it in the TV. It wasn't enough. They ran away, and Adam Wilborn then we got the closing segment of this wrestling match between these two teams. Would you like to finish it off?
Well, I remember doing this when we and you were doing a live stream for, was it Survivor Series? We were like, match goes 15 minutes, pretty good. Then Drake Maverick, you piss yourself. We finished the match. There we go. Right. So they go, yeah. So brawl a bit, bowling ball into the nuts, and some daydreaming about some girls saying you're fit, and some people saying your mate's not that fit. Ninjas show up, turkey leg. Eric thinks he can legitimately fight a man with a sword because he's just a Viking.
The 7 foot tall ninja also had about a 7 foot tall sword.
And then you run along the van a bit. You get to the point where there's a big old photo of No Way Jose, of course, who doesn't work for this company anymore. And then you all just get in the bin. I mean, I realise Vince wants to put tag team wrestling in the bin, but you didn't physically need to put the tag team champions and the number one contenders in the bin. To which a referee sort of peeked over and went, "What are you doing? You're meant to be having a match. What are you bloody playing at?"
What you like, eh?
I thought they're not going to try and force them to have a match after all this bollocks, are they? No, they didn't. And then they did. I thought it was initially doing the whole Star Wars.
I think it was meant
walls
to be
are closing in
thing.
But then an octopus showed up all squid or some bollocks and shit like that, and then they all got scared.
I think they were doing the Star Wars thing. It just wasn't very well executed. But there's a metaphor here for what Vince thinks of tag team wrestling, what Vince thinks of the tag team champions, and what Vince McMahon thinks of NXT promoters. Like, oh, that's the yellow brand. The black and yellow brand's best, is it? Bin. Bin. All of them in the bin. I don't even know. It sounds made up. It sounds like we've just made that all up.
There was a point. There was getting to a point on this show where someone pointed out: have they deliberately tried to make this whole card incredibly crap, just so we get to Randy Orton Edge and go, you know what? It's not the greatest wrestling match ever, but it's not as bad as some of this nonsense we've just been watching.
And there's a very good chance that was all very much on purpose.
But let's get to this greatest wrestling match ever. A surreal watch, this. Not in terms of the match, I will get to that in a second, but you had all the Greatest Showman homage stuff with that. You had the voice of Howard Finkel introducing the competitors, and then they'd already sort of preempted it by saying, look, we've really gone to town on this. We've put extra editing in there, new camera angles, and crowd noise. Now, obviously, we couldn't hear a lot of the crowd noise because we're doing the live stream, and we would have got taken down for effectively just airing WWE's product. But the bits we heard, I don't think a lot of fans could get on board with this. I compared it to a bit where you hit a taunt on SmackDown 2 Know Your Role, and the whole crowd is just a bit like, whoa, whoa. It was so out of kilter with what we have experienced and what we were expecting to experience. And it was about 4 "This is awesome" chants from a 100,000 seater arena, and you can see that there's 20 people from NXT there. But in terms of the actual wrestling match, Adam Nicholas, this was undoubtedly a pleasant surprise, and you said yourself, probably the best we're going to get from these two together.
I think so, and I think I actually think this was a really smart way to approach this match, because they're not going to put on the best wrestling match ever. That's not going to happen. They knew that. They were very aware of that. But what would you do if you were trying to create the best wrestling match ever? You would, if it was like ingredients in a cake, wouldn't you? You'd say, well, we'll just put that in, and we'll put that in, and we'll do this, and you might end up doing all that stuff. It's not going to equal the greatest match ever, but in theory, that's what you do. So what did they do? They just went through and picked a bunch of stuff that sort of developed their history between the two of them. They also did a bunch of stuff that just drew from matches and other wrestlers and their moves, which I will let you get to in just a second. But they told a story in there between the two of two guys who were actually going at pace for quite a bit of the match. Yes, you're always going to get some rest holds. It's a Randy Orton match, but Edge is also partial to telling stories at a slower pace. He doesn't want to tell the fast-paced matches all the time. There's a million people doing that, so why would he want to do exactly what they're doing? He's in the latter end of 40. He's not that guy anymore. So he will tell you these stories, and they'll be told slowly. That's the whole point. But to see them both going at a pace that they can actually get up to, I think it's the fastest I've ever seen Randy Orton run in quite some time. And I know that shouldn't be the bar, but that's what it was. But what about this drawing they did a lovely sort of homage to a lot of members from the SmackDown 6 that we noticed was cropping up. There was a lot of nods to, like, again, their previous matches together, previous opponents they both had. But then Adam Wilborn, we started moving into here's a bunch of moves from other people, which was just great.
Yeah, you mentioned there was the crossface in there. There was the three amigos. There was an angle slam. I should mention as well early on, this is a 45-minute match, like you say, in terms of the pacing. So initially we were getting quite frustrated of just like, oh, this is meant to be the greatest wrestling match ever, and it's just your typical Randy Orton headlock. Let's slow down this pace. But they've got to go 45 minutes. And like you say, it's one guy who's only just got back into wrestling, and another guy who's, even though he's been in this industry for so long, is, let's be honest, in the latter part of his career. So they had to pace it the way that they did, and it was an explosive sort of final 10-15 minutes, to be fair. Randy Orton even got busted open at one point. I do believe it was like a headbutt or something around that when they were battling on the ring apron. He just came up, and the match took so long that the blood had dried up by the end.
Yeah.
And there was a moment where Randy Orton was whispering sweet nothings in Edge's ear on the announce table. Well, we won't go into that. Yes, there was a moment where, I mean, talk about in Greatest Wrestling Match Ever, spamming of finishers. Well, they did that. It was just everyone else's. They hit a kill switch, so they called an unprettier. They hit a rock bottom. They hit a pedigree. They hit a whole bunch of spears. They hit an RKO. They hit an RKO with someone coming off the ropes. I've no doubt I've missed a whole host of other finishers that they got involved there. But it was genuinely quite enjoyable. I realised that a lot of the time we thought, well, it's not going to finish with, even we don't think it's going to finish with a pedigree, for example, but it informed the story so well, and you were wincing when Orton was going after his neck as well, because you know how close to reality that is. And hearing reports from Brian Alvarez, for example, that Edge has suffered a triceps injury, which is awful news, by the way, and who knows how long he's going to be out for. No doubt the guys will report on that in the morning, but the fact that he appears to have worked through the match, we've no idea when it occurred, with something like that, it's just further credit to what a wonderful match these two crafted together. Yeah,
absolutely. And if indeed he has worked the whole match with that, then that's even more impressive. I think, for me, as an Edge fan, the thing that I've kind of latched onto is the fact that these matches are for him. Yes, they are going off for WWE, but he's doing them for himself and to prove that he can still do these things. So they've been long, because he wants to prove he can go along. He did one outside, which was the WrestleMania match. Now he's proven he can do the wrestling in the ring, whether chain wrestling, it was like all these old finishers, all these new finishers that he's chucked in there, drawing from other bits of wrestling history. Like someone said on Twitter, I was like, this is the story being told. It's just wrestling history being told basically in one match. Like, you can see what they're trying to do, and they've both poured their souls into it in the end. But ultimately, we would come back to a massive callback, which was the perfect way, I think, to finish this match.
Kicking someone in the dick. No, Edge was locking in a submission on Randy Orton, who was battling and had been, put in a variety of different holds by Edge, and who'd really gone into his back catalogue, as you said, executions and what have you. Really good stuff. Anyway, he's going for that. And then with the referee, not distracted, but
unsighted.
Yeah, it's the best way of putting it. Edge goes for a kick. Edge. Orton goes for a kick, whether or not it's deliberate or not, but if it's Randy Orton, it probably is. Hoys him in the bollocks, which allows him to create a bit of separation and hit Edge, as he teased earlier on, with the punt. That obviously took Edge's head off. 1, not literally. 2, 3. Orton wins the match. Edge refuses medical help afterwards. And like you say, it wasn't the greatest wrestling match ever, but it was the match of the night, and it certainly was the goodest match ever.
I would agree. And not only that, but just to add a little bit of insult to injury, what did Randy Orton do when he hit the punt and killed Edge with it? He did one of the biggest leg slaps you've ever seen, which of course ties into this feud he's basically got with Tommaso Ciampa online. Look, it was as best and as good of a match as you were going to get out of these two, I think, and all the better for it.
Yes, all a lot better than what we'd anticipated, I think is the best way of putting that. Where we go from here, who knows? But Sorry, ninjas. I just said ninjas. Anyway,
yeah.
Let us know your thoughts on all of tonight's action in the comment section below and where we go from here. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to WhatCulture Wrestling on either iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast from for daily wrestling podcasts. My interview with Chris Jericho will be going up there very soon, in fact, and of course all the fallout from Backlash will be dealt with very soon. Simon Miller will be back. I was going to say tomorrow. No, it's getting light outside today, with ups and downs and all the usual stuff you can expect. You can let us know your thoughts as well on Twitter and any Twitter questions for the guys in the news in the morning at WhatCulture WWE. Watch there, follow both of us. You can follow Adam Nicholas at
It's Adam Nicholas. You can also follow Adam Wilborn at
Adam Wilborn. Follow us all at WhatCulture WWE. But this has been Backlash 2020. What went down? My thanks to Adam Nicholas. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you soon.